My parents ignored my 26th birthday, gifting my brother a Rolex and a cake with his name on it instead. They lectured me about supporting his vision, so I vanished with my proprietary software, shutting down their entire company overnight. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. My eyes burned with the specific, gritty ache that only comes from staring at lines of code for 72 hours straight. My temples throbbed in time with my pulse, and a low-grade fever made my skin feel entirely too tight for my bones. It was October 14th, my 26th birthday. I had spent the last 3 days locked in my cramped, windowless home office at the back of my parents' house, finalizing a massive server migration for the family business. It was a critical update, one that ensured our regional supply company could handle a sudden influx of holiday orders without crashing. I hadn't slept. I had barely eaten. But I pushed through the exhaustion because I believed, foolishly, that today would be the day they finally acknowledged my contributions. I saved the final backup protocol, closed my laptop, and took a deep, shaky breath. The quiet hum of the computer tower was the only sound in the room. I stretched my aching back, hearing my vertebrae pop, and slowly made my way down the hallway toward the main living area. I could hear the muffled sounds of laughter, the clinking of expensive crystal, and the upbeat tempo of a jazz playlist filtering through the heavy oak doors of the dining room. They remembered, I thought, a small, pathetic spark of hope warming my chest. They put together a surprise dinner. I pushed open the door and stepped into the warm glow of the chandelier. The long mahogany table was covered in a pristine white linen cloth, adorned with silver platters of roasted meats, artisan cheeses, and delicate pastries. Balloons in silver and gold hovered near the ceiling. But as my eyes adjusted to the light, the spark in my chest instantly turned to ice. Hanging across the grand bay window was a massive, custom-printed banner. It did not say, "Happy Birthday, Clara." It read, in bold, triumphant letters, "Congratulations, Julian, Vice President of Sales." Standing at the head of the table was my older brother, Julian. He was holding a glass of champagne, his perfectly styled hair catching the light, beaming as my parents, Richard and Helen, looked at him with an adoration that bordered on worship. Several of my parents' affluent friends and top clients were gathered around, clapping and raising their glasses. I stood in the doorway, invisible, shivering in my oversized cardigan. No one noticed me until my mother turned to refill a guest's glass. Her eyes flicked over me, taking in my pale face and messy bun. There was no warm smile of recognition, no realization of the date. Instead, her brow furrowed in a slight frown of disapproval. She quickly set down the bottle, excused herself from the guests, and marched over to me, grabbing my elbow and steering me roughly into the adjacent kitchen. The swinging door shut behind us, cutting off the sounds of the celebration. "Clara, what are you doing out here looking like that?" my mother hissed, her voice a sharp, hushed whisper. "We have important clients in there." "Mom," I started, my voice raspy and weak from lack of use. "It's my birthday. I just finished the server migration. I thought we were having dinner." My mother sighed, a heavy, dramatic sound that communicated her absolute exhaustion with my existence. "Clara, please, not tonight. Tonight is about your brother. He just closed the Peterson account." I had closed the Peterson account. I had built the customized, automated ordering portal that convinced the Peterson Group, our little regional company, could handle their nationwide logistics. Julian had simply taken them to an expensive lunch and handed them an iPad showing the interface I had coded from scratch. Before I could correct her, the kitchen door swung open again. My father stepped in, his face flushed with wine and pride. "Helen, we're ready for the presentation," he said, before noticing me standing by the refrigerator. "Ah, Clara, good. I was hoping to speak with you." He didn't say happy birthday. He didn't ask why I looked like I was about to collapse. He simply crossed his arms and looked at me with a stern, authoritative expression. Julian tells me that you were late updating the inventory spreadsheets for his meeting yesterday, my father said, his tone dripping with disappointment. Clara, you need to understand the pressure your brother is under. He is the face of this company. He is driving our vision forward. We need you to step up and do more to support his vision. Your attitude lately, this reclusive. Ennis in your room, it's not team behavior. I stared at him, my vision blurring. 5 years. I had given them 5 years of unpaid, grueling labor to drag their failing, paper ledger business into the digital age. I was the one who managed the accounts, the digital infrastructure, the cybersecurity, and the automated billing. Now come out there, my father commanded gently, though it wasn't a request. Put a smile on, we are giving him his gift. I followed them like a ghost back into the dining room. I watched, entirely numb, as my father handed Julian a velvet box. Julian opened it, gasping in feigned shock as he pulled out a gleaming, diamond-encrusted Rolex watch. The room erupted in applause. Then my mother brought out the cake. It was a massive, 3-tiered chocolate masterpiece. In elegant, sweeping icing, it read, "To Julian, our shining star, there was no small cupcake for me. There was no card." As Julian blew out the decorative candles on a cake presented on my 26th birthday, I forced the corners of my mouth to turn upward. I laughed along with the crowd, a hollow, mechanical sound, solely so I wouldn't collapse onto the floor and weep in front of them all. The erasure of my existence hurt far more than the theft of my labor. The celebration roared on downstairs, a symphony of clinking silverware and booming laughter that seemed to vibrate through the floorboards of my bedroom. I sat on the edge of my mattress, staring blankly at the wall. The fever that had been simmering in my blood had broken, leaving behind a cold, hollow clarity. My parents hadn't just forgotten my birthday, they had actively chosen to overwrite it. They had taken the profits from the very digital infrastructure I had built with my own hands and used it to purchase a monument to my brother's manufactured success. I stood up, my legs feeling strangely light, and walked over to my closet. I reached past the handful of business-casual clothes my mother had bought me for office days and pulled out an old, faded gray hoodie from my college years. I pulled it over my head, the soft material offering the only comfort I had felt all day. From the top shelf, I pulled down an old ceramic jar. Inside was a wad of emergency cash I had saved from fixing neighbors' computers, a grand total of $60. I shoved the bills into my pocket. I grabbed a small, unassuming duffel bag and began to pack. 2 pairs of jeans, a few t-shirts, basic toiletries. I didn't take anything they had bought me. I didn't want anything that tied me to this house. Just as I was zipping up the bag, the heavy thud of footsteps echoed in the hallway. My bedroom door opened without a knock. Julian leaned against the doorframe, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. He had rolled up the sleeves of his tailored dress shirt, ensuring the heavy gold and steel of the Rolex caught the overhead light. His face was flushed with triumph and alcohol. "Hey, keyboard warrior," he said, flashing a brilliant, empty smile. "Mom said you scuttled off. You missed the toasts." "I was tired, Julian," I said softly, sliding the duffel bag off the bed and onto the floor behind my legs with my heel. He took a sip of his drink, his eyes scanning my small, sparsely decorated room with a look of mild disgust. "Well, resting up is good. I need you fresh for tomorrow. The Peterson Group wants a custom reporting dashboard by noon. Make sure it has plenty of pie charts. Clients love pie charts." He didn't ask how I was. He didn't ask if I was feeling unwell. He just issued a command, fully expecting the invisible machinery of his sister to churn out his success. "A custom dashboard by noon," I repeated, keeping my voice perfectly level. "That takes time, Julian. You have to integrate the API." Julian rolled his eyes, a dramatic, sweeping gesture. He stepped into the room, walking over to my desk. He tapped his fingers against my closed laptop. "Clara, don't bore me with the nerd speak, okay? Just make the buttons work. I sold them on our state-of-the-art backend. Don't make a liar out of me." He paused, holding up his wrist, twisting it so the diamonds flashed. "Pretty sweet, right? Dad said it's an investment piece, a reward for true leadership. I looked at the watch. I knew exactly how much it cost because I had balanced the company ledger 2 days ago. It cost exactly the amount I had saved the company by negotiating a new server hosting contract, a negotiation Julian hadn't even known was happening. "It's very shiny," I said quietly. Julian chuckled, oblivious to the frost in my tone. "Right. Anyway, get some sleep. I have an early tea time with the regional managers tomorrow, so I need that dashboard waiting in my inbox before I hit the front 9. He turned and strolled out of the room, pulling the door shut behind him with a soft click. I stood alone in the silence of my room for a long time. My heart, which had been breaking for 5 years, fina. Ellie stopped shattering and began to harden into something cold, sharp, and resolute. I looked at the closed laptop on my desk. I thought about the servers, the databases, the proprietary code, and the hundreds of automated processes that kept my parents' business running from day to day. They thought they owned it all. They thought I was just a drone typing away in the dark, bound to them by family loyalty and a lack of ambition. I walked over to the desk, placed my hand flat on the cool metal of the laptop, and allowed a small, genuine smile to touch my lips. They had taken my time, my energy, and my credit, but they had forgotten one crucial thing. To understand the magnitude of their mistake, you have to understand exactly how we got here. 5 years ago, right as I was finishing my degree in computer science, my parents' regional supply company, Oak and Iron Industrial Supplies, was on the verge of bankruptcy. They were operating out of filing cabinets, losing invoices, double-booking shipments, and hemorrhaging clients to modernized competitors. They were desperate. My father, proud and stubborn, refused to hire outside consultants, claiming they were thieves in suits. So I stepped in. I moved back home, declining a lucrative junior developer position at a tech startup in the city. I spent my days crawling under dusty desks wiring Ethernet cables, and my nights writing thousands of lines of code. I built them a custom CRM, a dynamic inventory tracking system, and an automated logistics portal. I dragged their sinking ship out of the analog mud and into the modern era. I did it for free, under the promise that once the company stabilized, I would be made a full partner. The company didn't just stabilize, it exploded. Profits tripled within 2 years, but the partnership never materialized. Instead, Julian materialized. Julian had spent his 20s bouncing between finding himself in Europe and starting various, vaguely defined lifestyle brands that always mysteriously failed, requiring my parents to bail him out. He possessed a degree in communications and an absolute mastery of looking busy while doing nothing. When Oak and Iron started generating real wealth, Julian suddenly developed a deep passion for the family legacy. My parents, overjoyed that their golden boy was finally settling down, immediately named him vice president of sales. Julian was a masterclass in superficial charm. He wore suits that cost more than my car. He spoke in endless circles of corporate buzzwords, leveraging synergy, paradigm shifts, agile pivots, that dazzled my technologically illiterate parents. To them, Julian was a brilliant businessman. But behind closed doors, Julian was a parasite. He didn't know how to generate an invoice. He didn't know the password to his own company email for the first 3 months. His entire job consisted of taking clients to expensive dinners, making grandiose promises, and then marching into my dark office to demand I build the digital architecture to back up his lies. "Make it happen, Clara," was his catchphrase. If I protested, if I mentioned that I was working 80-hour weeks while he was on the golf course, he would twist the narrative with practiced ease. He would go to our parents with a deeply concerned look on his face. "Mom, Dad," he would sigh heavily, "I'm worried about Clara. She's struggling to keep up with the pace of my sales team. I don't want to micromanage her, but her bottlenecking is hurting our quarterly projections." And my parents would inevitably pull me aside, just as my father had done tonight, and lecture me on being a team player. They worshipped him. To them, The computers were just magic boxes. Julian was the magician. They completely failed to realize that Julian was just standing on stage waving a wand while I was trapped under the trapdoor, pulling the levers until my hands bled. I was pulled from my bitter memories by the sound of the front door closing downstairs. The party was winding down. The guests were leaving. I opened my laptop one last time. The screen illuminated the dark room, casting a blue glow over my face. I brought up the master control panel for the entire oak and iron digital infrastructure. I navigated to the administrative settings. For 5 years, my parents had refused to put any of the digital assets in the company's name because they didn't want to pay the unnecessary corporate registration fees for internet stuff. They had told me to just handle it. So I did. The domain name, the server hosting contracts, the proprietary software licenses, the database encryption keys, every single byte of data that kept Oak and Iron alive was legally registered, paid for, and entirely owned by a separate LLC. My LLC. Paid for by the meager freelance money I scraped together on weekends. Julian thought he was running a multi-million-dollar company. He was actually just renting my intellectual property for free. NT. Lease was up. My fingers flew across the keyboard. With 3 clicks, I revoked the administrative access for every user on the Oak and Iron network. I severed the connection between the sales portal and the inventory database. I initiated a full lockdown of the CRM, encrypting the client data under a new master key that only I possessed. Finally, I pulled up the main company website, the beautiful, sleek platform I had designed. I navigated to the homepage code, deleted the main display block, and typed a simple, plain text message on a white background. System offline. Server migration failed. Please contact your administrator. I hit enter. The company vanished from the internet. The digital heartbeat of Oak and Iron flatlined. I closed the laptop, placed it carefully into my duffel bag, and slung the strap over my shoulder. I walked out of my bedroom, down the quiet hallway, and slipped out the back door into the cool, dark October night, vanishing without a trace. The first rays of dawn were just beginning to filter through the greasy, smudged window of a 24-hour diner on the outskirts of town. I sat in a cracked vinyl booth, my hands wrapped tightly around a thick ceramic mug of black coffee, absorbing the heat into my freezing palms. The $60 from my jar had bought me a plate of cold toast and an indefinite lease on this table. It was 6 in the morning. Back at my parents' house, the alarm clocks would be ringing soon. I opened my laptop. The diner's free Wi-Fi was painfully slow, but it was enough. I logged into my isolated, encrypted dashboard, the one hidden far away from the Oak and Iron network. At exactly 7:30, the activity log began to twitch. First, it was a single ping, an automated request from the warehouse floor scanner attempting to connect to the inventory database. Connection refused. Then, 2 more pings. The accounting department computers trying to boot up the daily ledger. Connection refused. By 8:15, the log was a waterfall of red error messages cascading down my screen. Hundreds of desperate pings, login attempts, and server requests were slamming against the digital wall I had erected. I watched the numbers climb, a strange, breathless calm washing over me. Every single red line was a tiny, digital testament to my worth. They were finally seeing exactly how much of the company I carried on my shoulders. My phone, resting face down on the Formica table, began to vibrate. I ignored it. I needed to solidify my position before I engaged. Using the funds securely tucked away in my independent LLC's business account, money I had earned consulting for local bakeries and florists on weekends, I drafted a lengthy email to a corporate attorney named Marcus Vance. I had met Marcus briefly at a tech symposium 2 years prior, and he specialized in intellectual property and contract law. I attached the LLC registration documents, the time-stamped logs of my original code commits, and the receipts for the server space I had paid for out of my own pocket. I explained the situation plainly. I was the sole legal owner of the digital infrastructure running oak and iron. There was no employment contract, and I was withdrawing my property. By 9 o'clock, Marcus replied with a single, thrilling sentence. Your documentation is ironclad. They have no legal recourse to your IP. Call me at 10. With my defensive perimeter secured, I decided to go on the offensive. I had a copy of the entire oak and iron database stored securely on my local drive. For years, I had been too busy maintaining the system to actually scrutinize the data flowing through it. I only made sure the numbers balanced where they were supposed to. Now, I had the time. I opened the financial ledgers, specifically targeting Julian's department. He claimed to be the vice president of sales, driving all our new revenue. I wanted to see exactly how much driving he was doing. It took me less than an hour of cross-referencing to find the first anomaly. Julian submitted weekly expense reports for client entertainment and acquisition. They were always exorbitant: steakhouses, premium golf courses, luxury car rentals. My parents always approved them without a second glance, praising his aggressive networking. I pulled up the expense report for a Tuesday 3 weeks ago. Julian had expensed a $4,000 dinner and drinks tab at a high-end restaurant in the city, claiming he was entertaining the logistics directors of the Peterson account. I cross-referenced that date with the automated email logs I had built for the CRM. On that exact Tuesday, the Peterson directors had been participating in a mandatory, all-day virtual onboarding seminar that I had hosted. They hadn't been in the city. They hadn't been eating steak. My heart hammered against my ribs. I dug deeper. I pulled up the receipts he had submitted. Using a basic image forensic tool, I magnified the digital copies. The margins were perfectly straight, but the font on the total amount was just a fraction of a millimeter misaligned. He wasn't just wasting company money. He was actively altering the receipts and pocketing the difference. He was embezzling. The golden child wasn't just incompetent, he was a thief. I leaned back in the vinyl booth, a slow, deep breath escaping my lips. The trap was set. The leverage was in my hands. Now it was time to let them know the cage was locked. My phone had not stopped vibrating for 4 hours. The screen was a chaotic collage of missed calls and increasingly frantic text messages. Mom, Clara, where are you? The computers are broken. Julian has a presentation. Dad, Clara, answer your phone. This is highly unprofessional. Julian, fix the Wi-Fi now. I swear to God, Clara. At exactly noon, I finally picked up the device. I waited for it to start ringing again. It didn't take long. The caller ID flashed my father's name. I swiped to accept the call, bringing the phone slowly to my ear. Hello, Dad, I said, my voice eerily calm against the background clatter of the diner. Clara, my father bellowed, the sound making me wince slightly. Where on earth are you? Do you have any idea what is happening here? The entire system is down. We can't process a single order. We can't access the client list. The warehouse doesn't know what to load onto the trucks. Get back here immediately and fix this server nonsense. I'm not coming back, Dad, I replied evenly. And the servers aren't broken. They are offline by my command. There was a heavy, stunning silence on the other end of the line. I could hear the faint sound of my mother's anxious voice in the background asking what I had said. What do you mean by your command? My father demanded, his tone dropping from frantic to dangerously low. Have you lost your mind? Turn it back on. Now, Julian has the Peterson Group waiting for their custom dashboard. You are jeopardizing his biggest sale. It's not his sale, Dad. It's my automated portal. And he won't be showing them anything today, I said, taking a sip of my cold coffee. You see, Dad, the software, the databases, the domain name, the servers. Oak and Iron doesn't own them. You never wanted to pay the registration fees. So I registered them. Under my own LLC, with my own money. You've been using my intellectual property for free for 5 years. My lease is officially terminated. That is absurd, my father shouted, the panic finally breaking through his authoritative facade. You are an employee. We own whatever you made under our roof. I was never an employee, I corrected him softly. I never signed a contract, I never received a W-2, I never received a paycheck. I was a volunteer, and I am done volunteering. Suddenly, there was a scuffling sound on the line, and Julian's voice came through, high-pitched and breathless with rage. "You little sociopath," Julian screamed into the receiver. "You think you can hold my company hostage? I'm going to have you arrested for hacking. I'm calling the police right now. You're just jealous. You're a jealous, pathetic loser who can't stand that I'm the one making this business successful." I let him rant. I let him hyperventilate. When he finally paused to take a breath, I spoke, my voice cutting through his hysteria like a scalpel. "Successful?" I asked softly. "Julian, tell me about the $4,000 dinner you expensed 3 weeks ago, the one with the Peterson directors." The silence on the phone was absolute. It was so quiet I could hear the faint, rapid rhythm of Julian's breathing. "I have the email logs, Julian," I continued, my voice steady and relentless. "I know they were in a virtual seminar with me that entire evening. I also ran your receipt through an image analysis protocol. You altered the numbers. How many other receipts have you forged, Julian? How much of Mom and Dad's money have you stolen to pay for your suits and your Rolex?" You're lying," Julian stammered, his polished charisma completely shattering. "Dad, she's lying. She manipulated the data. She's trying to frame me because she's crazy." "I'm sending a copy of the analysis to Dad's personal email right now," I said, "along with the contact information for my attorney, Marcus Vance. Any further communication regarding my software will go through him. Happy birthday to me." I hung up the phone and powered it down entirely, sliding it across the table. I had thrown the first stone, and I knew exactly how hard the glass house was going to shatter. The next 48 hours were a masterclass in desperation from the Oak and Iron Executive Suite. Operating from the safety of a modest, extended-stay hotel room I had booked under my LLC, I monitored the situation through backchannels and server alerts. Marcus, my attorney, kept me fully apprised of their flailing attempts to regain control. First, they tried brute force. Marcus informed me that my father had hired an emergency, premium-rate IT firm from the city to bypass my lockout. I watched the server logs as the expensive consultants attempted to break through my encryption. They failed miserably. My architecture was custom-built, layered with military-grade security protocols, and tied directly to physical authentication keys that were sitting in my duffel bag. Within 6 hours, the IT firm informed my father that without my cooperation, the data was completely inaccessible. They also kindly reminded him that attempting to forcibly hack into servers legally owned by a third-party, LLC, was a federal crime. Then came the legal threats. Marcus received a blustering, aggressive cease and desist letter from my parents' ancient family lawyer, demanding I return the stolen company property immediately. Marcus responded with a polite, devastatingly thorough 20-page document outlining my undisputed legal ownership, backed by bank statements, time-stamped code repositories, and copyright filings. He essentially told them they were welcome to sue, but they would lose spectacularly and be forced to pay my legal fees in the process. While they were wasting thousands of dollars fighting a wall they couldn't climb, I continued to dig into the shadows of Julian's operations. The forged dinner receipts were just the appetizer. I needed the main course. I began auditing the vendor payout accounts. Oak and Iron routinely paid dozens of small, independent manufacturers for specialized parts. I noticed a recurring payment to a vendor listed simply as Apex Solutions. Over the last 14 months, Apex Solutions had billed Oak and Iron for over $80,000 in consulting and lead generation. I ran a background check on Apex Solutions. It took me less than 20 minutes to pull the state registry files. The company was a registered LLC. The sole proprietor, registered at a luxury apartment building downtown, was Julian. He hadn't just been padding his expense account. He had created a fake vendor and was actively siphoning tens of thousands of dollars out of our parents' business directly into his own pocket. He was bleeding them dry from the inside and using my automated billing system to hide the paperwork. I printed out the state registry documents. I printed out the ledger showing the payments. I printed out the forged receipts. I placed them all into a neat, manila folder. On Thursday morning, Marcus received a very different kind of email from my parents' lawyer. It wasn't a threat. It was a plea. My father was requesting a sit-down meeting. Oak and Iron was paralyzed. Clients were canceling orders. They were bleeding revenue by the hour. I agreed, but on my terms. We would meet at Marcus's office, in the large, glass-walled conference room overlooking the city. When I walked into the room, my parents were already seated. My mother looked as though she had aged 10 years, the dark circles under her eyes were prominent, and her posture was defeated. My father sat stiffly, his jaw clenched tight. Next to him sat Julian. The golden child looked like a cornered rat. His suit was wrinkled, he was sweating profusely, and the diamond Rolex seemed heavy and awkward on his wrist. "Clara," my father began, his voice devoid of its usual booming authority. It was strained, cracking slightly. "Please, this has gone far enough. We are losing everything. We will pay you. We will put you on salary. Just turn the machines back on." I didn't sit down. I walked to the head of the polished oak table and placed the manila folder down. "Dad," I said softly, looking at the man who had ignored my birthday to celebrate my tormentor. "The machines aren't the problem. The problem is sitting right next to you." I opened the folder. The stakes were at their absolute peak, and it was time to show them the cards. The silence in the conference room was absolute, a heavy, suffocating blanket that seemed to press against the glass walls. Marcus, my attorney, sat quietly to my left, his hands neatly folded over a legal pad, the picture of professional detachment. Opposite me, my family looked like strangers. My mother's eyes darted between the manila folder and my face, searching for a punchline to a joke she didn't understand. My father stared at the plain cardboard cover as if it were a bomb waiting to detonate. And Julian looked like a man standing on the gallows, watching the lever being pulled. "What is this, Clara?" my father finally asked. His voice was no longer the booming, authoritative instrument that had directed my life for the past 5 years. It was thin, reedy, and laced with a profound, terrifying uncertainty. He reached out a trembling hand, his fingers hovering just above the edge of the folder. "That, Dad, is the reality of your vice president of sales," I replied, my voice perfectly level. I didn't feel angry anymore. The fiery indignation that had propelled me out of there on my birthday had burned away, leaving behind a cold, clinical precision. "I want you to open it. I want you to read exactly what you've been funding." My father hesitated, then flipped the cover open. The first document was the heavily magnified, digitally enhanced printout of the $4,000 dinner receipt Julian had submitted 3 weeks prior. "Look at the date on that receipt, Dad," I instructed, my eyes fixed on his face. Julian expensed $4,000 at Le Petit Chateau, claiming he was entertaining the logistics directors for the Peterson account. "He told you that dinner was the reason they signed with us." "It was," Julian suddenly blurted out, his voice cracking violently. He slammed his hand against the mahogany table, the diamond Rolex catching the harsh, fluorescent light of the office. "I sealed that deal. I wined and dined them. You don't know anything about sales, Clara. You just sit in your dark little room and type." I didn't even look at him. I kept my gaze locked on my father. "Turn to the second page, Dad." My father, his breathing becoming shallow and erratic, turned the page. It was a printed log from the automated webinar software I had built and maintained for the company. "That is a time-stamped attendance log," I explained, the words tasting like sweet, long-awaited vindication. "On that exact date, at the exact time Julian claims to have been buying them prime rib in the city, the entire Peterson logistics team was logged into a mandatory 4-hour virtual onboarding seminar. A seminar that I hosted. From my bedroom. They were 400 miles away, Dad. They were never at that restaurant. My father's face went completely slack. He stared at the two pieces of paper, his eyes darting back and forth as his brain struggled to reconcile the irrefutable data with the golden image of his son. He's lying, Julian stammered, his polished veneer shattering into a million pathetic pieces. He looked at our mother, his eyes wide and pleading. Mom, tell her to stop. She's hacking the system. She manipulated the data to make me look bad because she's jealous. You know how jealous she is of me. My mother looked at Julian, her brow furrowed in deep, agonizing confusion. Julian, sweetheart, why would your sister make this up? The receipt, the numbers look strange. Because she's crazy, Julian screamed, standing up so violently his heavy leather chair crashed to the floor behind him. She's a sociopath. She's holding our company hostage, and now she's fabricating evidence. Marcus, who had been completely silent up to this point, cleared his throat softly. It was a quiet sound, but it carried the immense weight of the law. Mr. Julian, Marcus said smoothly, his tone conversational but completely devoid of warmth. I would advise you to choose your next words very carefully. Accusing my client of data manipulation and extortion in front of legal counsel is unwise. Furthermore, we had an independent, third-party forensic accountant verify the digital anomalies on that receipt. It is a forgery, plain and simple. Julian's mouth opened and closed like a dying fish. He sank slowly back down, picking up his chair with trembling hands. But it doesn't stop there, I continued, feeling the momentum of the truth pulling me forward. I reached across the table and flipped to the next section of the folder. Dad, Mom, look at this. It was the state registry document for Apex Solutions, LLC. For the past 14 months, I said, my voice dropping to a somber, heavy whisper, Oak and Iron has been paying a third-party vendor named Apex Solutions for consulting and lead generation. I pulled the vendor payout ledgers. Over the last year, you have authorized over $80,000 in payments to this company. My father looked up, his eyes bloodshot and wide with a sudden, dawning horror. Apex? Yes, Julian brought them in. He said they were a boutique firm. They helped us source the new manufacturing contacts overseas. They've been instrumental. They haven't done a single thing, Dad, I said, sliding the state registry document directly in front of him. Look at the registered owner. Look at the address. My father leaned in, his reading glasses slipping slightly down his nose. I watched his eyes scan the official state seal down to the proprietor information. I watched the exact moment his heart broke. He stopped breathing for 3 full seconds. A deep, guttural sound, like a wounded animal, escaped his throat. Julian, my father whispered, the name sounding like ashes in his mouth. The registered owner is Julian, the address. It's your luxury apartment downtown. My mother gasped, a sharp, piercing sound that echoed off the glass walls. She covered her mouth with both hands, tears instantly springing to her eyes. No, Julian, tell me this isn't true. Tell me you didn't steal from us. It's not stealing, Julian shrieked high. S face turning a mottled, furious purple. He was backed into a corner, completely exposed, and his reaction was pure, unfiltered entitlement. I earned that money. I am the reason this company is anything. I have to look the part. I have to drive the right car, wear the right clothes, take clients to the right places. You think I can do that on the pathetic salary you pay me? I am the vice president. I took what I was owed. The confession hung in the air, a toxic, undeniable poison. He hadn't even tried to deny the shell company. He just believed he was entitled to bleed his own family dry. My father slowly took off his reading glasses. His hands were shaking so violently he had to place them flat on the mahogany table to steady himself. He looked at Julian, truly looking at him, perhaps for the first time in 28 years. He didn't see the golden child anymore. He saw the parasite. You took what you were owed, my father repeated, his voice dropping to a terrifying, deadly calm. He stood up slowly, his imposing figure casting a long shadow across the table. He pointed a trembling finger at Julian's wrist. Take off the watch. Julian flinched, pulling his arm back protectively. What? No, you gave this to me. It was a birthday gift. It was bought with stolen money, my father roared, the sheer volume of his voice making both my mother and Julian jump. Money that Clara generated, money that you embezzled. Take it off, Julian, right now. Julian, weeping openly now, his chest heaving with pathetic, gasping sobs, fumbled with the clasp of the Rolex. He slid the heavy steel and diamond timepiece off his wrist and pushed it across the table. It slid to a stop right in front of my father. You are no longer the vice president of sales, my father said, his voice cold and hollow. You are no longer an employee of Oak and Iron. You are entirely cut off. And if you ever step foot on company property again, I will not only call the police, I will hand them this folder myself and press full felony charges. Get out. Julian looked at our mother, begging for a final lifeline. Mom, please. My mother, tears streaming down her face, couldn't even look at him. She simply turned her head away, her shoulders shaking with silent, devastating sobs. Julian scrambled to his feet, knocking his chair over again, and practically ran out of the conference room, the heavy glass door slamming shut behind him. The silence returned, heavier and more profound than before. My father looked down at the forged receipts, the dummy LLC registration, and the gleaming Rolex resting on the table. Then, very slowly, he looked up at me. There was no anger in his eyes anymore. There was only a profound, crushing shame. Clara, he whispered, his voice cracking. I didn't stay to hear the apology. Not yet. The wound was too fresh, the victory too raw. I simply nodded to Marcus, closed the manila folder, picked up my duffel bag, and walked out of the room, leaving them to sit in the ruins of the illusion they had built. 2 weeks passed. I remained in my extended stay hotel room, keeping the servers locked down, continuing to run my independent freelance projects, and letting the absolute reality of the situation settle over my family. I needed them to feel the full weight of the consequences. I needed them to understand exactly what life was like without me silently holding up their world. Marcus kept me informed of the developments. Oak and Iron was entirely frozen. Without the inventory database and the billing software, they couldn't move a single piece of product. The company was hemorrhaging money, but my father refused to hire outside IT again. He knew it was useless. He was waiting for me. As for Julian, his downfall was swift and absolute. Without his corporate credit card and his embezzled funds, his lifestyle collapsed overnight. His luxury apartment management filed for eviction within 10 days when his rent check bounced. His expensive friends vanished the moment he couldn't pick up the tab at the steakhouses. Marcus informed me that my father had officially filed a police report for the embezzlement, utilizing the evidence I had provided. Julian's bank accounts were frozen pending a full fraud investigation, and he was currently sleeping on the couch of a former fraternity brother, facing multiple felony counts. Then, on a rainy Tuesday evening, exactly 14 days after I had walked out of that conference room, my phone buzzed. It wasn't a text or an email from the lawyer. It was a direct call from my father. I let it go to voicemail. I sat on the edge of my hotel bed, watching the rain streak down the window pane, and listened to the message he left. Clara, my father's voice came through the speaker, thick, raspy, and broken. I could hear the distinct, undeniable sound of him weeping. Clara, please, I am so sorry. I am so deeply, profoundly sorry. I was blind. I was a fool. We lost every thing. We lost our son, and worse, we drove away our brilliant daughter. Your room's still here. Please pick up. Please, sweetheart, just talk to me. The sound of his tears, the raw, unfiltered desperation in his voice, finally pierced the cold armor I had been wearing for 2 weeks. He wasn't demanding I fix the computers. He wasn't ordering me to support his vision. He was a broken father begging for his daughter. I dialed his number back. He answered on the first ring. I'm here, Dad, I said softly. Oh, Clara, thank God, he breathed, his voice trembling. I am so sorry. We were so incredibly wrong. We took you for granted. We let him abuse your hard work. We let him steal from us while you were the only one actually saving us. I don't care about the business anymore, Clara. I just want my daughter back." "I want a relationship with you and Mom, too," I replied, feeling a hot tear finally slip down my own cheek. "But things are never going to be the same, Dad. I am never going back to that little dark room. I am never working for free again." "Anything," he said immediately, without a second of hesitation. "Whatever you want, just tell us." We met the following morning at a quiet, neutral cafe halfway between my hotel and their house. Both of my parents looked exhausted, aged by the trauma of the past 2 weeks, but when they saw me, their faces lit up with genuine, unadulterated relief. My mother hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe, weeping into my shoulder and apologizing over and over again. When we finally sat down, I laid out the new reality. "I am not coming back to my old bedroom," I stated clearly, sipping my tea. "I am renting my own apartment in the city. As for the business, I will unlock the servers and migrate the infrastructure back to the company network. But I am no longer a volunteer. I am no longer an employee. My attorney has drafted a new corporate structure." I slid a polished legal document across the table. "I am taking Julian's vacant position on the board," I explained, watching my father read the terms. "I am the new Chief Technology Officer. Furthermore, in exchange for the permanent licensing of my proprietary software and the 5 years of unpaid back wages, I am taking a 50% equity stake in Oak and Iron Industrial Supplies. We are equal partners now." My father didn't argue. He didn't try to negotiate. He pulled a pen from his breast pocket, signed his name on the dotted line, and pushed the contract back to me. "You earned every single % of it, Clara," he said, his eyes shining with a mixture of tears and genuine pride. "We would be honored to have you as our partner." It took 3 days to bring Oak and Iron fully back online. I did it from the comfort of my new, spacious apartment downtown, a place flooded with natural light and paid for with my new executive salary. The company recovered swiftly. The clients, relieved that our technical difficulties were resolved, flooded us with back orders. Julian's criminal trial is scheduled for next spring. He tried to reach out to me once, leaving a rambling, angry voicemail demanding I drop the charges and give him his job back. I simply forwarded the recording to his parole officer and blocked his number. He had made his choices, and now he was living in the reality he had created. As for me, I finally stepped out of the shadows. I no longer code in the dark. I run the company I saved, standing in the bright light of my own hard-won justice, knowing that my worth is no longer something I have to prove, it is something I definitively own.